something's happening in the WNBA, and if you're only watching the games, you're missing it. Caitlin Clark may be new to the league, but the waves she's making go far beyond the court. She's not just dropping dimes and deep threes, she's quietly exposing a deeper fracture inside one of the league's most high-profile teams. And it's not about play style or growing pains, it's about control. Behind the highlight reels and media praise, there's a silent conflict unfolding, one that's pitting a generational talent against an organization that doesn't seem ready for her. And if you know how to read the signals, every comment, every injury, every sideline glance, it all points to the same conclusion. This relationship isn't built to last. But here's the thing. This story isn't just about Caitlin Clark. It's about a shift happening across the entire WNBA, a battle between old-school management and a new era of empowered athletes who know exactly what they're worth. And right now, Clark is the epicenter. From the outside, everything looked fine. A record-breaking rookie joining a struggling franchise, bringing fresh energy, national attention, and a surge in ticket sales. But behind the sold-out arenas and trending clips, something felt off. The first warning sign came not from reporters or analysts, but from Clark herself. In a post-game interview, she didn't mince words. "We need to do a better job getting me the ball in transition." That wasn't a casual comment. That was a calculated statement. For a rookie, it was bold. For someone like Caitlin Clark, it was strategic. This wasn't about ego. It was about identity. Clark made her name playing fast, chaotic, creative basketball. Transition play isn't just her strength, it's her signature. It's where she thrives, where defenses unravel, and where fans hold their breath. So when she said she wasn't getting those opportunities, she wasn't just pointing at missed passes. She was pointing at a system that didn't understand her. And what followed only confirmed that disconnect. Coach Stephanie White responded by defending the Fever's structure, a dual ball handler system designed, according to her, to relieve pressure and ease Clark's adjustment to the pros. On paper, it made sense, but on the court, it looked like something else entirely. Restriction, hesitation, a generational score being reduced to a secondary piece. It begged the question, why draft a player who breaks the mold only to fit her into one? That moment marked a turning point. What should have been a conversation about adaptation became a quiet tug of war over control. Clark wasn't just adapting to the WNBA, she was already pushing back against it. To understand how deep this rift goes, you have to understand Caitlin Clark's game. She doesn't just play basketball, she weaponizes chaos. She's the type of player who thrives in broken plays, feeds off transition, and turns highlight reels into highlight reels. She's unpredictable in the best way possible. And most importantly, she plays fast. So when the Indiana Fever implemented a system designed to slow things down, limiting touches, emphasizing structured sets, and controlling the pace, it was like taking a wildfire and trying to box it into a fireplace. Clark isn't built for safe. She's built for sudden. Her most iconic moments aren't drawn up. They're improvised. Logo threes on the break, full court dimes in traffic, split-second decisions that unravel defenses before they can even react. That's her DNA. But under the Fever scheme, that chaos was clipped. The dual ball handler system, while pitched as protection from full court pressure, functionally turned her into a decoy for large stretches. The ball moved through hands that weren't built to break the game open. Possession slowed, spacing collapsed, and Clark, who had just spent 4 years rewriting offensive rules in college, found herself watching plays unfold instead of creating them. It wasn't just a tactical mismatch, it was philosophical. The Fever were trying to manage her, but Clark isn't a player you manage. You build around her, or you get run over by the momentum she creates. That's not arrogance. That's how generational players operate. You don't give them a seat at the table, you build the table around them. And the deeper this misalignment went, the more visible it became. Not just in the stat sheets, but in Clark's body language, in her spacing on the court, and eventually, in the frustrations she began to voice publicly. It was no longer just about system fit. It was about respect, and the lack of it was beginning to show. If Clark's early frustrations hinted at something deeper, the injury episode practically screamed it. Midway through a regular season game, Clark visibly winced. She clutched at her groin, hobbled through possessions, and fought to stay composed while holding back what looked like tears. Cameras caught it. The crowd sighed. Social media lit up instantly. This wasn't a minor bump or a routine tweak. This was a clear pain signal from the league's most visible star. And yet, the organization's response was dismissive. Coach Stephanie White addressed the media post-game and brushed it off with a phrase that quickly ignited WNBA circles. She's just feeling a little something. A little something? When your franchise player is limping in real time and blinking back tears on national television? Fans didn't buy it. Neither did analysts. And if you were watching closely, Clark's own face said everything the press conference didn't. The problem wasn't just the lack of transparency. It was the tone. It was the casual minimization of a player whose health, legacy, and brand have already become inseparable from the league's growth. It sent a clear message, intentional or not, that protecting the player came second to protecting the narrative. But here's the thing. You can't manage someone like Caitlin Clark with vague statements and PR patches. She's too big, too smart, and she knows exactly what kind of power her presence carries. That moment, her injury being glossed over as a little something, didn't just sting fans. It marked a breaking point in the perception of Indiana's priorities. Because when the franchise downplays the pain of the very player keeping it relevant, the message becomes painfully clear. You're an asset, not a partner. And that's when conversations shift from what's wrong with the system to is this somewhere she can actually stay? While fans were dissecting box scores and injury reports, something far more calculated was unfolding behind the curtain. Enter Kane, Clark's agent. Quietly powerful, strategically visible, and not just playing the game, reshaping it. Because this isn't just about handling media requests and negotiating sneaker deals. This is about positioning a generational client as a catalyst for systemic change. And if you've been watching closely, the signs are all there. Kane's presence at competitor arenas? Not random. Her name surfacing in quiet circles tied to CBA discussions? Not coincidence. The subtle yet consistent narrative shifts around Clark's role, usage, and value? That's not a media cycle. That's strategy. See, Kane understands something most franchises are still struggling to accept. Clark isn't just a player. She's a brand, a business, a billion-dollar catalyst for the WNBA's new era. She fills arenas, moves merch, boosts TV ratings, and captures global attention. And you don't handle a player like that with old-school playbooks and vague reassurances. You leverage her. Every frustration Clark has voiced, every eyebrow-raising injury response, every missed opportunity to showcase her explosiveness, all of it has become ammunition. Not for a trade demand, but for a broader agenda, changing the rules of power in professional women's basketball. Because here's the real play. Clark's situation in Indiana is being framed not as an isolated conflict, but as Exhibit A in a case for CBA reform. A case that argues elite players deserve more input, more protection, and more autonomy. And Kane? She's not just advocating for Clark. She's laying the groundwork for every future superstar who refuses to be treated like a replaceable piece in someone else's system. That's the difference. This isn't about leaving Indiana tomorrow. It's about building the case today, brick by brick, so when the leverage window opens, the story is already written. And the league? It's watching closely. In October 2024, the WNBA Players Association quietly made a move that changed everything. They opted out of the current collective bargaining agreement. At the time, it barely made headlines, but to anyone paying attention, it was a seismic shift. Because buried beneath the fine print was something far more powerful than any stat line or all-star selection. It was leverage. And Clark's situation? It's now front and center in that negotiation. Here's what you need to know.
The next CBA won't just tweak salary caps or travel policies, it'll shape the very structure of player movement, team control, and career autonomy for years to come. Free agency rules, rookie contracts, extension windows, the entire framework is back on the table. And Clark's camp knows,
why wait until 2028 for her rookie contract to expire when you can reshape the system before then? That's the play Kane appears to be making, not by demanding a trade, but by turning every uncomfortable moment in Indiana into a data point in a larger argument. The argument that the current system fails to protect, respect, or empower the stars it profits from. And it's not just theory. The timing proves it. By 2026, nearly 88% of projected WNBA All-Stars will hit unrestricted free agency. That's not a fluke. That's a restructure in motion. And if Clark's case becomes the blueprint, a high-profile example of misused talent, limited agency, and corporate tone deafness, then the bargaining table becomes a battlefield. But here's where it gets even more calculated. This strategy doesn't rely on a dramatic fallout. It thrives on visible tension, the public frustration, the injury mishandling, the silence from Indiana's front office. Each one adds weight to the argument that elite players need more control over their roles, their health, their futures. Clark isn't just playing in the WNBA. She's being used to change it. So when the new CBA finally drops and the rules suddenly shift in favor of player autonomy, don't be surprised. This isn't random momentum. This is a long game with the pieces already in place. And Indiana, whether they realize it or not, they're not just managing a player, they're starring in the case study that might rewrite the league. If the tension in Indiana revealed fractures, then Clark's return to Iowa reminded everyone exactly what she represents, not just to a franchise, but to a movement. That exhibition game at our old stomping grounds wasn't just a feel-good PR moment, it was a statement. Clark stepped onto that court carrying a groin injury, still visibly limited, and yet she dropped a 36-foot three-pointer from the edge of her memorial logo like it was nothing. The arena exploded, not because they were surprised, but because it felt inevitable. It was the kind of moment that made one thing painfully clear. Indiana is just where she plays. Iowa is where she's understood. That shot, that smile, the eruption of the crowd wasn't just nostalgia, it was symbolism. This was a player returning to a place where her game wasn't managed, but unleashed, where her confidence wasn't questioned, it was amplified. And while she wore a different jersey, the reception she received looked a lot more like a homecoming than a road game. Even the camera angles told a story. Zoomed-in expressions, emotional fans, Clark turning to the crowd with that familiar, fearless grin, as if to say, "This is who I am, and this is what I'm still capable of, even with one leg half working." And for those watching closely, it wasn't just inspiring, it was revealing. Because in that moment, the contrast couldn't be sharper. A player celebrated unconditionally in a building that trusted her instincts versus a franchise still unsure of how to use her without breaking their own system. The difference wasn't just tactical, it was philosophical. This wasn't just a reminder of Clark's greatness, it was a quiet but undeniable message. If you won't let me lead your team, I'll remind everyone why I don't need permission to lead a movement. At what point do a series of coincidences stop looking accidental? Clark's public frustration with her role, the mishandled injury response, her agent's carefully timed appearances at rival games, the sudden spike in social media engagement around subtle organizational drama. On their own, each of these might be dismissed as isolated moments, but together, they start to look a lot more like strategy than circumstance. Let's be clear, no one from Clark's camp is on record demanding a trade. There's no dramatic sit-down interview, no viral quote tearing into the franchise. And that's exactly what makes this all so effective. Because silence, when paired with calculated visibility, speaks volumes. Every no comment becomes a blank canvas for speculation. Every vague injury update becomes a symbol of mistrust. Every smile at a competitor's facility becomes a breadcrumb in a much larger trail. And the people picking up those breadcrumbs aren't just fans. There are other players, agents, executives. The league is watching, and they know how this works. This isn't chaos. This is controlled tension. Clark's camp doesn't need to light a fire to make a point. All they have to do is let the cracks show and let the public, the media, and eventually the league office draw their own conclusions. What does it mean when your franchise player is more celebrated on a college campus than in her own arena? What does it mean when her agent is suddenly visible at games that have nothing to do with Indiana? What does it mean when Clark content explodes online every time there's even a whisper of organizational friction? It means the narrative is already shifting without a single press release. And the brilliance of this approach, it buys time, it builds pressure. It creates a climate where by the time the 2026 free agency wave hits and the new CBA is in place, no one will be shocked if Clark's future no longer includes Indiana. Because the story won't be that she left, it'll be that everyone saw it coming. What's happening between Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever isn't just a story about a rookie clashing with her team. It's a snapshot of a league in transition, a league evolving faster than some of its franchises can keep up with. For years, the WNBA was treated like a developmental extension of basketball, structured, managed, and often restrained by traditional ideas about hierarchy, discipline, and top-down control. But that era, it's ending. And Clark may be the moment that makes it impossible to ignore. She's not just an individual talent, she's a turning point. Her situation is exposing a fundamental truth. Teams that operate like it's still 2010, controlling narratives, downplaying injuries, silencing tension, are gonna get left behind. Because the next wave of WNBA stars isn't just bringing talent, they're bringing leverage, brand power, massive audiences, and expectations to be treated like partners, not pawns.
Clark's quiet resistance isn't just personal, it's philosophical. It challenges the core of how stars are handled in women's professional sports. Do you build around them and evolve, or do you try to manage them and risk becoming irrelevant? This is bigger than one player and one franchise. It's a referendum on the WNBA's future. The next generation isn't waiting to be granted permission. They know what they're worth. They're connected, strategic, and incredibly aware of how fast the power dynamics are shifting. And while some teams are scrambling to figure that out, others are preparing for what's coming. Because the truth is, Clark's story, her frustrations, her misalignment with the system, her rising profile, isn't an outlier. It's the template. The franchises that understand this will adapt and thrive. The ones that don't, they'll become cautionary tales. Not because they lack talent, but because they failed to evolve. In Indiana, right now they're standing at that exact crossroads. So where does this all go? On paper, Caitlin Clark is locked into Indiana through 2028, but in reality, contracts don't hold nearly as much weight when trust erodes and the spotlight gets brighter. Smart agents don't wait for deals to expire. They build pressure, shape narratives, and find leverage where others see dead ends. And right now, all signs point to one truth. This isn't sustainable. Clark has already shown the league what she's capable of, not just in points, but in influence. Her presence boosts ticket sales, viewership, sponsorships, and relevance. She's not just a rising star, she's the star, and she knows it. But being the face of the league doesn't mean staying silent while your system restricts you, or watching your injuries get shrugged off, or staying loyal to a structure that views you as a marketing tool more than a movement leader. That's not how this new generation plays. The CBA renegotiations, they're her escape hatch, but more importantly, they're her platform. And everyone's watching what she does with it. Clark's story is becoming more than just a rookie adjustment arc. It's becoming a test case for what player empowerment really looks like in the WNBA. The comments, the frustration, the symbolic moments, they're not random, they're messages. And those messages are resonating with every young player who doesn't want to be boxed in by outdated systems. Indiana now faces a choice. And it's not just about keeping a superstar happy, it's about deciding whether they want to evolve or become the latest example of a franchise that couldn't keep up. Because here's the reality. If they adapt, they can build a dynasty around a once-in-a-generation player. If they don't, Clark's future won't just take her somewhere else, it'll take the future of the league with her. And that's what makes the story so much bigger than one player or one team. It's the start of a shift, a recalibration of power, a quiet but undeniable revolution in how the WNBA will operate for years to come. So when we say Clark just revealed why she can't stay in Indiana much longer, it's not because of a leaked report or a press conference. It's because every moment, every play, every quote, every silence is pointing in one direction. The question isn't if something's going to break, it's who breaks first. And in this version of the WNBA, players aren't the ones who get broken anymore.